31% of workers are quietly sabotaging their employer's AI rollout, feeding bad data, refusing tools, and gaming metrics. Among younger generations, resistance is even fiercer. This isn't mindless rebellion. It is a calculated response to corporate overreach. Why are so many risking their jobs to undermine technology that is supposed to guarantee the future? What they are protecting is bigger than it seems, and it is forcing a showdown you have not heard about yet. A survey conducted in December 2024 pulled back the curtain on a workplace revolt few executives saw coming. Out of 1,600 U.S. knowledge workers, half executives and half rank-and-file employees, nearly a third admitted to actively undermining their company's AI rollout. That means for every 3 people in a meeting, 1 is quietly working against the very technology the company is betting on. Among millennials and Gen Z, the number jumps to 41%. These are not isolated acts or outliers. They are part of a broad pattern playing out across industries, from finance to tech to retail. The survey's definition of sabotage covers a spectrum. 10% of workers say they have tampered with performance metrics to make AI look worse than it is. Others admit to generating low-quality outputs on purpose, refusing to use company-approved AI tools, or skipping required training. Some say they enter company data into unauthorized AI apps, with 27% confessing to this risky workaround. 16% say they knew about AI-related security leaks but kept quiet. For some, resistance means doing things the old way, manual processes, ignored recommendations, shadow work that keeps the human touch alive in a world increasingly run by algorithms. Executives are not blind to the fallout. 42% say generative AI is tearing their company apart. Despite pouring money into AI, most firms in the survey spend over $1 million a year. Only 45% of employees believe these rollouts are actually working. Executives, on the other hand, are far more optimistic, with nearly 3/4 convinced their strategies are a success. This gap is not just about numbers, it is about trust, control, and the future of work itself. The survey did not just count acts of defiance, it drew a composite portrait of the modern worker, someone caught between pressure to adapt and fear of being replaced, someone who weighs every new tool against their own job security. Behind every statistic is a person making a choice, sometimes quietly, sometimes in the open, to resist the march of automation. The numbers are clear. The resistance is organized, widespread, and growing. Inside the walls of America's offices and server rooms, a quiet arms race is underway. It is not just about refusing to use a new tool or skipping a training session. Workers are getting creative and sometimes technical about how they push back against AI. The most brazen tactic is metric tampering. 1 in 10 admit to manipulating the numbers, making AI look slow, buggy, or just plain wrong. For a software engineer in a major tech firm, this might mean adjusting a single line of code so that an AI-powered dashboard misreports its own accuracy. A data analyst at a retail chain describes it as nudging the system, feeding it edge cases and outliers until the results look unreliable in front of management. But sabotage does not always require technical know-how. Nearly everyone has found a workaround. The survey reveals that 98% of employees use unsanctioned apps at work. These are not fringe tools, they are cloud spreadsheets, free chatbots, or old software that is not on the approved list. 35% pay out of pocket for tools they trust, bypassing company-issued AI entirely. One technical worker describes keeping a thumb drive with their own scripts, running them after hours to verify the AI recommendations before sending anything to a client. It is a shadow workflow, invisible to the official logs but essential for peace of mind. There's also the tactic known as malicious compliance. Some workers follow every AI recommendation to the letter, even when it is obviously flawed. If the AI says to send a customer a generic apology, they do it, knowing it will backfire and draw complaints. Others quietly revert to manual processes, entering data twice or running parallel systems just to keep their bases covered. These acts are rarely discussed in the open, But in private group chats and encrypted messages, workers swap stories and share tips on how to survive the rollout. Technical staff are often at the forefront. They understand how the systems work and how to make them stumble without leaving obvious fingerprints. But resistance is not limited to coders. Across departments, employees are finding ways to keep a human hand on the wheel. Every workaround, every tampered metric adds up. The pressure builds not as a single act of rebellion, but as thousands of small, daily choices that force companies to confront the limits of their AI ambitions. Software company executives once promised AI would make everyone's job easier. But when resistance took hold, the mood inside boardrooms turned cold. At one major firm, the solution was blunt. Up to 80% of staff were cut in a single quarter. The message was unmistakable: refuse to embrace AI and you are out. Some employees described being fired without warning. One day their badges worked, the next morning every account was locked. No exit interview, no chance to plead their case. The chief executive officer called it a necessary purge, insisting that only those ready for the future would remain. Payroll budgets once earmarked for training and workshops vanished overnight, replaced by a skeleton crew expected to do more with less, and always with AI at the center. The purge was not limited to non-technical staff. Engineers, analysts, and project leads, those most familiar with the limits of AI, were among the first to go. Executives framed these firings as a strategic reset, boasting to investors about higher profit margins and leaner operations. But behind the numbers, the cost was steep. Decades of expertise walked out the door. Projects stalled as newly promoted managers scrambled to fill knowledge gaps left by their former colleagues. Remaining employees learned quickly. Adaptation was not just encouraged, it was mandatory. Any sign of hesitation could be grounds for termination. Lockouts became the new normal. Employees described the surreal experience of watching colleagues disappear from chat channels and email threads in real time. The chilling effect spread far beyond the offices where the firings took place. Across the industry, word traveled fast. Resistance had a price. For every worker quietly pushing back, there was now the threat of instant erasure. It was a reminder that in the age of AI, even silence could be a risk. Mandatory AI policies swept through corporate America in 2025. At one tech giant, a message landed in inboxes overnight that AI is no longer optional. The company's HR teams became the new enforcers, quietly tracking every click, every login, every ignored prompt. Employees who failed to use company-approved AI tools saw their bonuses shrink and their career ladders shorten, no matter how well they performed in other areas. In another sector, performance reviews now included a new metric, AI usage, weighted as heavily as teamwork or productivity. By 2026, companies like Meta had tied advancement and even job security to digital compliance. Behind the scenes, a new layer of surveillance took hold. Real-time dashboards monitored which employees were running AI apps, how often, and for how long. Specialized software flagged those who still preferred spreadsheets or manual workflows. The numbers fed directly to HR, where composite profiles tracked patterns of resistance. One HR officer described the new routine. "We do not just look for productivity anymore. We look for who is on board with the future and who is holding us back." The pressure was not subtle. In a survey of senior executives, nearly 6 out of 10 said they would replace workers who resisted AI adoption. Some companies sent blunt warnings that if you do not adopt it, there will not be a place for you in the future. For employees, the message was unmistakable: comply or risk being flagged for review. In this environment, even the smallest deviation could draw scrutiny. An engineer who preferred to double-check AI outputs by hand found herself on a list for coaching. A project manager who logged fewer AI hours than her peers was called in for a meeting. Every action, every hesitation became a data point in a system designed to detect resistance before it could spread. The result was a workplace transformed by invisible oversight. Compliance was no longer about meeting deadlines or hitting targets. It was about proving loyalty to an algorithm every day under the watchful eye of both software and HR. Fear is the silent partner in every AI rollout. For a new hire just out of college, the pressure starts before the badge is even printed. 89% of workers say they worry about AI threatening their job security. For many, that anxiety is not abstract. Nearly half, 43%, already know someone who has lost a job to automation or AI. Entry-level roles, once seen as a safe way in, are vanishing fast. Since the launch of ChatGPT, job postings for those positions have dropped by 13%. Doubt creeps in with every system update. 45% of employees say they do not trust the reliability of the AI tools their companies push. The disappointment is not just about lost jobs, it is about broken promises. Companies promised that AI would take care of the boring parts, free up creativity, and make work more meaningful. Instead, workers are left questioning if their skills have any value at all. The fear runs deeper for those just starting out. Picture a junior analyst, eager to prove herself, watching as her tasks are handed to an algorithm. She is told to rely on the system, but every mistake the AI makes lands on her desk. If she double-checks its work, she is seen as resistant. If she does not, she risks being blamed for the errors of the AI. It is a no-win situation that leaves her feeling invisible. Research backs up these worries. An MIT study found that students who relied on AI tools actually performed worse when the tools were taken away. The more they leaned on automation, the more their own skills faded. That is not just a statistic, it is a warning. For millions of workers, resistance is not sabotage. It is a survival instinct. When the ground keeps shifting, holding on to what you know feels like the only way to stay upright. Picket lines stretched for blocks outside the major studios as the Writers Guild of America shut down Hollywood for 148 days in 2023. Writers, showrunners, and union leaders stood shoulder to shoulder, refusing to let studios turn generative AI into a silent replacement for their craft. The strike was not just about pay or residuals. It was a fight over who gets to call themselves a creator in the age of algorithms. Studio executives arrived at the table with visions of AI-generated scripts, faster, cheaper, and without the headaches of human negotiation. The Guild's answer was unflinching. No AI system would ever be credited as a writer. No studio could force a writer to use AI tools, and any material generated by an algorithm could not count as source material for compensation or credit. These protections became the backbone of the new contract, ratified by 99% of Writers Guild of America members. For the first time, a major American labor contract drew a hard line against the unchecked spread of artificial intelligence. Writers who spent months in the sun and rain outside studio gates walked away with contract language that made it clear storytelling would remain a human job. Their defiance sent a message far beyond Hollywood. Organized action could force even the most powerful employers to back down from an AI-first future. The victory became a rallying point for other workers watching their own industries change overnight. Cargo ships sat idle in harbors, up and down the East Coast as tens of thousands of dockworkers walked off the job in October 2024. For the first time since 1977, the flow of goods ground to a halt at 36 ports. Stacks of containers rose higher by the hour. Trucks lined up along the waterfront with nowhere to go. At the heart of the standoff was a single demand: protect jobs from automation. Union negotiators, some with salt and pepper beards, others barely out of their 20s, stood together at the bargaining table. One negotiator, a third-generation longshoreman, described it simply: "We move the world's cargo. We're not letting robots take our place without a fight." The strike reached into every corner of the economy. Grocers warned of empty shelves. Retailers braced for a holiday season without shipments. Employers called the union stand reckless, but the workers held firm, knowing the leverage they had with the world waiting on the docks. After months of deadlock, the breakthrough came in January 2025. The settlement allowed some semi-automated technology, but required that human operators stay on the job. Job guarantees were written into the contract. When the vote came, 99% of members ratified the deal. For the 45,000 to 50,000 workers who had risked their livelihoods, the message was clear: organized pressure could still win real protections in an automated world. pressure from below has forced some of the world's largest companies to reverse course. A leading fintech firm, once proud of its AI-only customer service, quietly began rehiring human agents after customers and workers pushed back. An HR software company scrapped plans to list AI bots as employees just 72 hours after the idea leaked, and public outrage forced a retreat. In Las Vegas, casino workers secured contract language for advance notice and severance pay when AI replaces jobs. Across the Atlantic, a French court suspended a corporation's AI deployment, ruling that management had failed to consult with workers before automating tasks. International courts have started to rule that companies cannot use AI adoption as grounds for immediate termination. Each of these victories chips away at the idea that automation is inevitable and unstoppable. Legal advocates warn that these wins are fragile. A Nobel Prize-winning economist from MIT cautions, "We're using AI too much for automation and not enough for providing expertise to workers." The World Economic Forum's 2025 report forecasts that 40% of employers expect to reduce their workforce as AI spreads. In the U.S. Senate, Bernie Sanders introduced a bill calling for a moratorium on job-displacing AI, calling it the most consequential technology in human history. The window for action is narrowing. As the pace of adoption accelerates, the consequences of inaction grow clearer with every reversal, every court ruling, and every warning from those who study the future of work. Right now, nearly half of younger workers are pushing back against AI mandates, not out of fear, but to defend their futures. As corporations double down on automation, the standoff over who controls work deepens. The next chapter is not about technology, it is about power. The window to shape this future is closing fast. Where will you stand when your job becomes a battleground?